Wait, should we do a quick welcome just to
Oh yeah,
just to
yeah,
like
sure, yeah, yeah. It's
just to
the
start the
yeah, sure. Let's do it. So we're back after
it has been a while.
a while, like the 2023 season now, right? So we did you did the lottery, so
Mhm.
there was
Mhm.
technically like a mini show
Yes,
before,
yes.
but this
It's
is like
weird to just talk to yourself. I will just say like you're talking and then like the natural pacing you want to go at is just like way too fast, so you just have to
yeah,
kind of like just pause and like let the dead air kind of just like live for a little bit, but like it is so tempting to just like talk because like you feel awkward just like sitting there in silence.
right.
But yeah, this is the first I think legit show in quite a while because we
Yeah,
had some years where we did it like more sporadically, and then yeah. So this year, I what I'm trying to get going is like less of a one man operation, two man operation, and I would like ideally for everyone to kind of like jump on, even if it's not as formal as this show. I would like if everybody like kind of got used to just contributing and like letting their voice be heard, because I do think after a while, like when it's just our voices being heard, it does kind of feel like unfair both ways, because like one, we get to like just comment on everything, and then also we just have to like divulge too much of like I think like what we're thinking at all times, and I think that's also a disadvantage. So it would be nice if we got to a point where everyone shares the load and everyone yeah has like a different level of involvement.
yeah. I think that sounds good. I mean, it doesn't have to be this super high quality production that we've got going on here. I think you could just like do it on Zoom or do it on audio recording or whatever, right? Like don't have to have video. It can be whoever it is. Just
Yeah.
save
I
the
mean,
audio,
I think
save
like
the
some
video.
options are just straight up talking about like the last week in trades with like one other person that
Sure.
you want to like talk with, and just be like like take stances, or like just be like I didn't understand this, or praise a trade. You could go that direction.
Yeah.
It can be as free form as possible, so I just I just want to see like some of that like going.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. We do have Diaz today. Um, hello, Diaz.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And you've shared with us your beautiful simulation here, where you've looked at all of our teams in the auction, right, and how you projected us to do this. So you did this with Kimmel. Is this correct?
Yeah, can you
Yes.
explain like your exact I guess process, how
Yeah.
you build this
What's
out?
going on?
So, I try as early as possible to predict what all the keepers are going to be, what their salaries will be, so I can start getting an idea of what the landscape will be, who will be available, and how much money will be available in the auction. Um, Usually, the best time to do it is right after the rookie draft. Um, And so I do a few of these on my own to get an idea, and then Danny and I get together a little bit closer to the draft to do a few together, so that we can, it's very valuable to have his perspective and not just my own. This one is incomplete because we were doing it probably up until like 10 minutes before the draft on Monday night, so we didn't get to play everything out. But the idea here is we want to confirm that if certain players go for certain amounts, that we're going to be comfortable either drafting them for that amount or picking somebody else, and like confirming that other players will be there that at a value later in the draft, and then also to see, um, if we take somebody, how do we feel about the rest of our roster if you spend $50 at running back or $80 at running back or whatever else. One thing that we found was that it was very difficult for us to be happy at tight end if we waited, so we wanted to be aggressive on that.
Uh,
As you could see in the draft, we ended up with Mark Andrews, so that was very important to us.
So
Quick question.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry,
Yeah,
let me just ask this.
yeah.
Um, so you kind of told us right before the show that you guys split the board, and you guys so you basically like act out a full auction. Is that correct, or is there like some other like thing? And like if so, like, how long do you think like one of these like, full out mocks take? Do they take, close to as long as a real draft, or is it like just a lot more like quick fire thoughts where you're just kind of getting the basics of it?
Yeah, and to
Yeah,
add
we
on,
try to.
add
Yeah, go
on
ahead.
really quick, like, do you also simulate the bidding too between people, or
Right. Yeah, that's
do you
a
just
really
put
good
it in?
question. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We try to speed it up. So like if it's the two of us, then whoever will nominate in the order, in the correct order.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
Okay.
Which was also made, it was an extra challenge this year because the order was randomized by that cool,
I did.
running
I did
game.
think that was gonna trip you up a little bit, so I did throw it in. But before this year, I don't think we had the option to like actually control the nominations because I would have
Oh.
liked to have done something like this before anyway. But yeah, like when I found out that that was the option, I just did kind of like commissioner power it through and just did a randomization. So I am sorry if that tripped you up, but I'm also not sorry at all. So
No, I will. I can adjust. What was better
Mhm.
is that we moved forward, right? My expectation, which I believe last year it was reverse standings,
Right.
so we would have been sixth, and we
Hmm.
moved to fourth. So
Hmm.
I'm happy to sacrifice the prediction in order to get my nomination earlier. But yeah, as far as the auction, we try to cut some corners, speed it up so that it doesn't take the real draft can take hours. Usually we'll spend like 1 hour on one of these, and yeah, it's just you kind of do some of the math in your head, saying, okay, I'm the left side of the board, Danny's the right side of the board. And so I'm looking at my five guys, and I'm saying, okay, these three don't need a wide receiver. These two, who really wants it more? Okay, John bid 65, and then
Gotcha.
Danny will look at his guys, and he'll say, all right, we're out, and then we give it to John for 65 or whatever.
Hmm. I love that.
Interesting. Very cool. Very cool. Do you also simulate the rollbacks? No, I'm just kidding. Oh, freaking fan tracks. So no, I mean it's really cool that you do this. It's I think a very valuable process to have. I think you probably because of all this, this is basically practicing the draft, right? So you practice this
Yeah.
multiple times, and then when you get into the real draft, you've already seen it all, right? You've already seen the different possibilities of what other teams are thinking about, and so you're kind of a step ahead, which is pretty good
Yeah.
for you.
Because that's definitely one of the big things, like where the drop off at a certain position happens, and then like which
Yeah.
teams are likely to be in for it. Like it could just be two teams, but if they need a position really bad, it goes for like way above what like what a predicted auction value chart might give you. And conversely, like if even if like a lot of teams need it, if they're like low on money or whatever, a position could go really really lower than what people think. So if you do enough iterations of this, I think you probably get some like really interesting insights on like, oh, like every time we've done this, like this quarterback comes out really cheap just because I think that after this quarterback goes off, like I think everybody's just not gonna be hugely looking here, or like stuff like that is just gonna like pop out to you. So I think you could definitely have like a huge advantage over a lot of other teams just in what to be prepared for.
Now, did you find anything surprising? Like, did you? Because you, one other thing is like you could practice in a way that's completely different than what the actual draft is. So, did anything throw you off? Uh,
I lost your audio. Did
hello?
Yeah, I lost it too. Yeah, like
Oh,
I think
halfway through what you were saying.
oh,
you were asking were there surprises, right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So one thing that I think I really need to remember to factor in is that not because not everybody does this, not everybody has as firm a grip on not to put ideas in anyone else's head, but I think that what I don't factor in is that there's going to be money left over, right?
Mm,
Hmm.
So you could see I won the first we won the first auction at Eckler because I said, oh, Eckler's an $80 player, this is 77, but if there's going to be money left over, then maybe he's not an $80 player. Maybe he's a
Hmm.
$75 player. And so that I have to remember. But yeah, you know what always surprises, what needs to stop surprising me about the league is the league doesn't like to bid up tight end, and to maybe even a lesser extent, but still quarterback. You know, I mean, there were some teams that obviously needed quarterbacks. There are some teams in the league today after the draft who are starting guys who are maybe not really in the top 20 at QB2 or in Superflex, you know, whatever position you want to call it. And I need to remember that there are some teams that are willing to do that strategically and not force them in the draft, in the mock, to bid up the top guys available.
Right. I will say something interesting I've observed is while I don't think anyone does a full out mock to the extent that you do, I have heard more and more people kind of mentioning like they know like, oh, this team is like okay going a little bit cheaper on quarterback, or like this team traditionally wants a specific type of running, like level of running back or something, and they are like kind of building in the tendencies of like, it's basically what you're doing kind of, except kind of just in their head, like they think like, okay, like since I know that like this team's going to go cheap on probably quarterback, I'm expecting them to go pretty high for, a big hole, like maybe at running back or wide receiver. And then like, teams are kind of extrapolating out kind of in their head, I think. And I think that's probably a decent amount your, I guess, influence, but also just kind of a natural evolution of just being in a league this long running. People are starting to like, really look for tendencies and like edges on like how you can predict other people will act, so you can get like the really good deals, like and be ready for any kind of thing that happens in the auction.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I mean, I have a hard time just figuring out myself sometimes. So, so I mean, a lot of kudos to people who are doing that and thinking about that. I take a quick look. I'll just say for myself, I take a quick look, but I don't do anything more than that. I'll say.
Right. But I don't actually think it always works out in everyone's favor. Because let's say you predict this person like has always gone, cheap at tight end for like the last like 4 or 5 years. So often, like that guy has been like struggling through tight end like the last 4 or 5 years, and he's like, you know what, this year I'm not fucking ending up with like the eighth tight end off the board, and then they actually turn out to spend a lot on tight end, or just an example, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, like he's not acting the way I thought he would act. And I think like a big part of our league also is like like people definitely do switch up their strategies when they get like continuous failures doing a certain thing, like John was doing CMC for 100 plus like every year, and then he eventually kind of grew out of that, and like I think we saw a lot less of like a high end on like what he was willing to go for certain players. So it can get you into like a very tricky situation if you do rely too much on so-called tendencies or trying to predict what other teams are thinking. So like I don't think if you do less of that, like you're necessarily at a disadvantage. You actually might be better off. But definitely have seen more people like at least like start to talk or think about like, oh, what does this team like to do in auction?
Absolutely, and we're different too, right? So like I think I could try to read the flow of the draft, maybe in the moment. Maybe some people are not, right? Yeah,
have all the the information like kind of pre-downloaded, and some people like to see like, okay, like I kind of feel like running back is just kind of moving this direction, and then like you can just kind of play it more flexibly. So
exactly.
I think I mean that's the great thing about this league, like every approach like I think like works as long as you're like good at it and you understand what the strengths and weaknesses of what you're doing is. So yeah, I certainly don't think it's necessary to do a full mock draft like this necessarily, but it is interesting to see how people's processes change over a long period of time.
Yep, definitely. I think let's move to. So I was thinking of going through people's teams, and I think for YouTube, since there are dividers, I gotta figure out how to edit. But like, if we can put like
really,
people's
really nice for looking back later, maybe.
Oh yeah, true. Why don't we start with last year's winner, our 3 time champion, Virginia. All right, why don't we go there? Let's
I
see
thought
what.
this league got canceled for 3 years.
Oh,
Is
I
that
mean,
not
I
true?
mean, I mean, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you got to
Let's.
give credit to 2 or 3 times. So yeah, so let's get that out of the way, and then let's talk about the season.
let's focus on this. It's a new year. All right, everyone's got a chance,
True.
including Virginia. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you guys think about the roster strategy? Whatever. I'll start with you, Diaz. Like, what are your thoughts here with the team?
So in the moment, I was very jealous of the Tyreek Hill value at 65. I think it's a good value. I wonder if WAD doesn't maybe regret going for someone who's just a little bit cheaper at that position so that he could spread his salary more evenly. Or, maybe it's the Najee Harris because he's a fairly polarizing player. But I feel like there just wasn't quite enough meat left. I mean, well, not that's putting it lightly. He had to draft a lot of $1 players, and I think he would have preferred not to. And I wonder if there's something he would have changed in the draft to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, I felt the same exact way. I'm not entirely sure what happened. It probably is that Najee. But looking at it again, you're right. Maybe it is the Tyreek. It's definitely one of the two, right? It's everyone else was from the keeper contract. So it ended up that he had a lot of $1 picks at the end. But what were your thoughts, Dustin?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of either or. If you do get the $65 Tyreek, which I do agree is pretty good value for what I thought, I think you have to set your limit for whatever you get in that Najee spot at slightly under 31. Going to 31 on that just meant that he had a little leeway for like 1 or 2 other like non $1 players, and then after that, he was forced to go $1. I think way too early in the draft. And in our league, I think like having $2 or $3 per like end of the bench like flyers makes a huge difference over the $1 ones, because when you're bidding, you bid a $1 guy that you actually want, and then someone just bids 2, and then you have to wait till your next chance to like bid again. You're never able to like beat out somebody else's nomination. So you either have to start nominating guys that you don't really want, and then like nobody else bids, and you get that guy for $1, or you have to just kind of save. Or yeah, you have to save your guys that you actually want and hope that like they last later in the draft where people forget about them. But yeah, I think this roster could have been a lot better if there were better like upside cheap pieces like outside of the main core. Like I don't think Juju Smith-Schuster or like Jacoby Myers, they might be decent value for what they are, but like when you have too many of them, I feel like you're not getting enough shots on upside. But I do think he'll probably be very active in the waivers pretty early on to try to mitigate that. And the core of the team is very strong. Tyreek Hill for that price, like we mentioned, was very good. Joe Burrow, Jacobs, Higgins, that's like a really, really good core that a lot of teams don't even really have to start with. So overall, I do think he'll navigate it as well as possible, but I definitely do think he probably was regretting maybe going all the way to 31 on Najee, or maybe he saw like 2 guys that he could have split Tyreek Hill's money into that he might have liked better and still had a little bit of money for the end of the draft. So while I don't think he executed like, his probably perfect draft plan, I do think this is still probably going to be one of the stronger teams just because the bones are strong, and I do have confidence that he'll, sort out the kind of bottom third of that roster through waivers or even trades.
The manager bonus.
The manager bonus, yeah. I wonder how much of this was his strategy. Like, how much was this, like, was this even a mess up? Did he even want to do this, right? Like, maybe this was on purpose. This was by design. Stars and scrubs, where he's saying that his QBs and Josh Jacobs and Najee Harris are going to be the superstars, and everyone else get on the, and Tyreek, of course, but you'll follow, right? Everyone else will follow and fall in place, and he'll figure it out.
My guess is to a certain extent he did expect this, but I think he might have gone like $1 or $2 over on one guy, and then it led to, instead of having like a 2 or 3 maximum bid down like the last like 4, 5, 6 guys of his roster, he ended up having a one maximum bid at like 6 or 7 guys left, and I don't think that was probably what he was ideally going for. But
Right.
I do think to a large extent he probably was like, yeah, I want to get one of those like star receivers, or what, or maybe a running back, and then a pretty good second guy, and then fill out the rest with like pretty nice upside pieces. But he must have. Well, I personally think he might have like gone a little bit too high on one guy, and then he just before he knew it, he was down to one bid, and yeah, he probably found it a little bit frustrating. But yeah, I am curious as to how he felt about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think before we move on, just pointing out, Jerry Jeudy went for 12. I don't think he kept him, so that might have been a moment as well. Maybe some regret. And then the other thing is that I saw he had 2 defenses already. One of the only managers who goes 2 defenses on week 1. And this is, again, coming from experience, right? Sure, my lineup might not have as many good players as you do, but my defense will be better than yours, and it will outscore yours by, what, 10, 20 points, right? And make up the difference. That just, again, goes to that manager bonus. Has been in this league for, of course, the beginning. And, again, he's won a couple of times now. He knows the drill, right? So I think it's already showing. We'll see. It's a week-to-week league, right? So we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's go to Duho. Let's take a look.
Like it.
And yeah. Runner up, of course, and some respect to Orange County's name here. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Dustin? I'll put you on the spot first. If you took a look at this roster and see what's going on here.
I mean, I think what stands out a lot is he's gone into the drafts with very, very little money to spend for like the last 2 or 3 years, and then this year she had pretty much all the money to spend. So it was kind of interesting to see. I wasn't sure what he would even spend his money on. But I actually do think he did a decent job. Like, he did take a very, very risky swing on Cooper Kupp, I think, but at the same time, I think he needed to. Like, if he just took safe bets throughout the draft, like, I don't know if he had the bones to really make it a strong enough roster anyway. So he was just hoping, maybe Kupp starts the season healthy, or comes back really early, and it could still play out that way. He just needs to get through a few weeks, but definitely might be somewhat of a rebuilding year for him, just because I think he did stretch the limits of his previous core as far as he could. And he had to pay for a lot of it this year with the Jonathan Taylor cut. Not really all his fault, but it was a pretty long contract for him. And yeah, like he definitely had to like reset a little bit. And I don't know. I definitely do see the strategy that he's going for. And I do think he's kind of ready for that kind of a reload or rebuild or whatever you want to call it. So it is pretty much what I expected. I don't think it's going to be one of the stronger teams this year, but I also don't think that it's far enough away where people should be like, oh yeah, this team's like definitely not going anywhere. It just does need a lot of things to like fall their way. But in this league, less has surprised me than this team going pretty far. So
yeah, he got super unlucky with that Jonathan Taylor. But yeah, Diaz, your thoughts here?
I'm looking at Kyle Pitts on this team. I think my feeling is Kyle Pitts' season ended last year because he tore his MCL. If he, as the Falcons are telling us, is healthy, I think that Duho bought him at his floor. A $21 player, right? This is a guy who was the number 4 pick in the draft, quote unquote generational talent. If he just does what he did last year, I think he'll be worth $21 because the tight end landscape is not great. If he's able to catch some of the passes that Marcus Mariota threw nowhere near him, even when he was wide open last year, and score some touchdowns, I think this is going to look like a very good pick. And I think it might turn into the keeper that I assume Duho is looking for here. So I think that's a very interesting pick, and I liked it. And I also liked his strategy at QB. He didn't break the bank on anybody, but I think he's got three startable guys. And I'm excited to see what happens with Sam Howell.
Yeah, I think usually when you see a team, a roster construction, you see a lot of balance. But here, what screams out to me is a high ceiling and a very low floor, right? Like high risk, high reward.
Yes.
This thing could go and blow up either way. And I think Cooper Cup kind of shows you that, right? That guy's already injured. And is a little bit cheaper than usual. And if he comes back, I mean, he's already on there. But if he comes back and he's great, then that you've got a stud at wide receiver. You've got a bunch of those. Kyle Pitts, you name, but a lot of these guys. Russell Wilson, even, right? That dude is a bum.
Yep.
But potentially, right? He could be also a star with Sean Payne. You never know.
There's reasons to think that that turns around.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to add on, like I do think like his strategy was like flexibility. I see a lot of flexibility with this team. A lot of pieces that can be movable, like nothing like too huge where it takes a very specific kind of deal to like kind of like fit stuff in. He has a lot of stuff like in the 20 and under range. I think Prescott at 39 is a player that is worth that amount to like carve out for, because I do think like quarterback does get ugly really quick. But like let's say Russell Wilson does bounce back, then Sam Howell, very like flexible to move and like can be really attractive to the right team, and vice versa. I mean, Russell Wilson for 20, like if some team is really struggling at quarterback too, $20 is really easy to like fit in and match salaries a bit to get to the right place. And then like let's say he needs a throw in to like kind of like make the numbers even. Like he has a bunch of guys that I think are like right around that, and it will take a good amount of trading, I think, but he can, like, whether his goal this year is going to be pull out contention. I do agree a lot of things will have to go right, but if that's it, like he'll still have that flexibility to move certain pieces for guys that he wants. And if his eventual fate this year is kind of rebuilding, I do think like Saquon at 61, Cooper Kupp, if he escapes the the hamstring like at midseason, that's going to be one of the more attractive pieces at that price. Like he might just really have like really good flexibility to control the market around midseason. So I think that's probably partially what he was going for, and to that extent, I think he did execute pretty well.
Yeah, actually, to add to that, I mean, we clown him for the dead cap that he's carrying, but that actually helps him, right? If he's gonna be trading away these guys, he can trade away a ton of these guys and have that extra $50 or whatever, and he's fine.
Yep.
So that works to his favor.
It's especially important for him because of the dead cap to have, like, he's gonna have to be matching salaries or like thinking about salaries basically the whole year, whereas like other teams are like not thinking about it until like trade deadline. But for him, like, he's gonna always want to like keep an eye on like whether he's increasing his salary burden or not. So I think this is the right type of roster to play around that. But we'll have to see. Like if he hits on all the high ends of some of these pieces, he could contend. But probably the like average outcome for this is probably going to be somewhere in the middle or lower.
Yeah, I think before moving on here, one thing I'll say is that he's already got Sam Howell in his starting lineup. This guy, like, Dak is on the bench. This guy. So, I mean,
true blue Giants fan.
This guy, like, he does what he wants. I think we're gonna see this from Duo. This is just how he plays the game. It's I think amazing.
Good or bad, this is gonna be a pretty entertaining season. Just watching that team, like, even if it's bad, it's gonna be pretty funny. I think he's gonna have some crazy, plays and like some crazy starts and stuff, and it'll be entertaining for sure. It won't be like one of those boring kind of like, oh, like this team just kind of sucks. Like, we don't want to talk about this team every week. We'll probably still be like, whether it's clowning it or like marveling at how he picked out this like random player to start. Like, I think it'll be pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I love it. I have to just say, I mean, I love this. This is hilarious. But yeah, maybe it is that Giants homerism going a bit too far potentially. Let's go to LIC. Let's hit up LIC next. Man, this team is looking quite stacked, at least to me. It just has that double QB. You've got Josh Allen, he picked up from Duo. You got Trevor Lawrence, and then those young wide receivers, right? The studded Justin Jefferson. You got two up-and-comers, Olave and Wilson. I think just from that alone, that's what he carried into the auction. You don't need to add too much from there, right? But I think he did a really good job even in the auction to pick up a couple of really great names. Nick Chubb, I think he's a stud. He's going to be one of the top running backs. And then he's got filled out with a couple of interesting names, right? I mean, I think... So he started Jerick McKinnon here. Is that true? Is this real?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he's got. I mean, that's unfortunate. Interesting in a bad way, but interesting in a good way is David Montgomery, Michael Pittman. I think those guys are going to be really good. Dallas Goedert, of course, he's going to be a solid tight end. So you don't really need much to supplement your keepers, right? With that kind of core. Mm-hmm. But man, Jerick McKinnon. Oh man, that's a tough way to start on that running back position. But yeah, Diaz, you got any more thoughts on that to add on here?
Yeah, I mean this is a very strong team. That flex spot is the main weakness that we're looking at right now. They weren't confident leaning on Rashad Penny week 1. Who knows how that Eagles backfield is going to shake out? But they have enough lottery tickets that it's hard to believe that someone won't emerge to fill that spot more consistently than Jerick McKinnon, Devon Achane, Sean Tucker, who is now, I think, the running back 2 already in Tampa Bay. Nico Collins, who's getting a lot of hype. And one guy I wanted to touch on, Jameson Williams, who is another very polarizing player. A lot of people are saying, and I know, Dustin, I'm sure you have an opinion because he's a Lion. But, a lot of things I've heard in the offseason, especially in the dynasty communities, is sell your Jameson Williams shares. This guy is never getting on the field. The suspension, the injury, obviously some of it's bad luck. That suspension thing is total bullshit, but it's hard to see what he will become, and I wonder if you think that this was a good pick by Warren, or if he's going to struggle having that suspension on his bench for this period of time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, I think that was a really interesting pick, and regardless of whether it is his fault or not, like, I don't think that part even matters about Jameson Williams. Like, sure, I think some of it is just a lot of bad luck and, like, dumb suspensions, but just missing out on, game time and missing out on, like, training camp time, practice time, like, it's hard. It's hard to develop when you're a young player that, that's when you should be, like, soaking up reps in a situation where people aren't maybe expecting you to be the complete package. But at this point, it's been so long since, he's been drafted relatively that when he does come back and plays, there's going to be a little bit of pressure on him to, like, show that he was worth it. And I think that could be kind of like a spiral where, like, it isn't conducive for him to, like, play to his ability, and, the pressure is just making it kind of not worse. But I mean, so if he went for, like, 4 and he could have been stashed on a practice squad or something, I think it would have been a home run pick. At 7, it's tough to see it paying off as handsomely, even though I loved his talent, just because I think he's had hamstring issues outside of, like, the suspensions. Just so much has gone wrong for him that the vibes definitely aren't positive right there. But, like, if you really believe in his talent, I definitely don't have a problem with you taking a swing, and, holding him through suspension is obviously not ideal, but, it very well could be worth it, because as we saw, the Lions do have a much better team this year, and at wide receiver, there's not a lot of talent outside of Amon-Ra. So when he does come back, it won't take a lot for him to be, immediately their second most talented, receiver. So all in all, like, I do see the risk of it, and if you believe in the talent, I do think it's worth it. I think what I said in my power rankings about the team overall is that it's a very modern fantasy football team where zero RB is, like, all the rage. Wide receivers, quarterbacks, very strong. Like, in a super flex league, it's very important. He took one guy that's pretty much a lock to perform in Nick Chubb, and then I think he did a pretty good job of scattering enough seeds for something to emerge long term as the flex, as Diaz said, is the problem here. It is kind of interesting which running backs he ended up with. Like, I think McKinnon was a pickup, so I guess that doesn't count. But Penny, I wasn't expecting him to be kind of on that train. And then he has, I guess, 2/3 of the Dolphins' backfield, which could pay off pretty well too. So it's gonna take some navigating, but it's so rock solid at all the other positions that it's honestly one of the easier situations to pilot out of most of these teams that I'm seeing on the board.
Yeah, it's such an interesting team, actually, the more I look at it. With those 4 QBs, right? He's got 2 up top. And most of the time, actually, if you've got those 2, you would feel really good. But now he's got 2 backups that are starters and I think are okay. I mean, they're not going to be terrible. I don't think they're going to be amazing either. But I think they're going to be serviceable for a lot of teams. And then on top of that, seems like there's a little bit of a youth movement of a lot of these players. And then, you've got that starting lineup that's really strong as well. So it's kind of 2 different directions, but we'll see how that kind of together as the season progresses and, a lot more, weeks go by. Justin Tucker, of course, is on this team, obviously. There's no question about that. But, if there's anything else, let's move on.
Wait, for you, Wankyu, is
Yeah.
is this a top 3 team on paper for you, or?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I think right now, as of this moment, right, week 1, although, again, I'm staring at this Jerick McKinnon. I'm like, man, that sucks. That's brutal. But no, besides that, right, I think it's a really, really strong roster, as I mentioned. It should be.
In the finals, Jerick McKinnon is going to look great. Jerick McKinnon is going to be scoring 21 points in week 16 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
possible.
Didn't that happen last year?
I will say one thing. For a team that needs to find a kind of a solution at that flex, like we said, long term, it is kind of not ideal to be holding 4 quarterbacks, which means 2 of them aren't really, doing anything any week. And then also the suspension of Jameson Williams. That's another spot where you're not really seeing anything for quite a while. Like you would think that for a team that needs to figure out maybe that flex, like they want to have more roster flexibility for turning through guys. Like, you missed on a Jerick McKinnon, but you also maybe pick up another guy that does break out like on a week-to-week basis. So that is kind of curious. I know his hand was kind of forced with the poach attempt on Love, and he probably, wasn't sure that he was going to end up with Jameson Williams, so it's not like something he could have prepped for. But I do think it is a little bit maybe non-ideal for what the one weakness of this team is, to also just have like 4 quarterbacks. And Stroud can't even be traded for 4 weeks. So, it isn't a lot of flexibility to be they're basically just going to be turning that Jerick McKinnon roster spot until something pops up. But it is a little bit tighter than maybe you would want for this kind of roster.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think he will be fine. But, strong teams have weaknesses too, right? So I think that's kind of what's happening. And you're right. Maybe the play could be a little bit different there to try and see if you can fill the flex. But then there's also the whole waiver wire, right? And maybe he's got flexibility. I mean, I don't want to say, but McKinnon, he may or may not. I don't know. I feel like I would drop him. But, we'll see. We'll see if he sticks around on the roster. Sure. And if he can find someone. I bet he can. That's what he usually does every year, right? Finds a diamond in the rough. Why don't we go to Madison? Why don't we go to another, I think, really strong team? Diaz, any thoughts on Madison? Let's start with you.
Well, how exciting it is to have a new manager in the league, one whose tendencies I don't know too well yet, and to see how they approach the draft. It was I like the Diggs pick. When you compare him to Tyreek, it's a little bit of a question of, how much better is Tyreek for only $3 more? But they didn't really want to go after a top-tier running back, and I'm very curious if that was maybe a miscalculation or intentional, kind of like what you were saying, Dustin, of the modern draft strategy to go hero RB or whatever you want to call it. Because
Hmm.
they have a lot of depth at wide receiver, and they already traded some of it to John to get
Hmm.
Kyler in a trade that I like for Madison. Um,
Hmm.
but I would be looking for the running back here, and I'm not seeing it yet. The running back too.
Yeah, Dustin, you want to add on?
Yeah, no, I would have pretty much agreed exactly with that. Like, you probably did want to see maybe a slightly better running back too, coming out of the draft than I guess James Conner. That team kind of just looks like it could be an awful offense and could be kind of painful starting James Conner, every week. And then, you know, I'm pretty certain that their flex will probably come from wide receiver because they do have a good amount of depth there. But yeah, like I think I probably would have liked this draft a little bit better if they went with a better running back too. But yeah, it just might be modern fantasy football where you kind of like really load up on wide receivers that are gonna have really good offenses and they're consistent week to week. You can switch them in. They get hurt less often in theory. So I like a lot of the values at wide receiver they got outside of their keepers, which on Raw and Waddle I think fantastic start. Um, but I do think this is like a strategic choice by them. I do think they were prepped for really leaning into wide receivers and kind of letting the running backs just be a little bit weaker on paper, but maybe they're thinking if Dalvin Cook gets a full share of the Jets backfield at some point, all of a sudden they're fine there, like that kind of is the nature of the running back position. Like if Jalen Warren kind of just passes or maybe Najee gets hurt, it's just the nature of the position. So if that's what they're thinking, like I can see it playing out well. It's not something you can predict right now, but if you're playing the numbers, I could see that this team is going to go pretty far. Like they just have to be diligent on waivers, I think, and one of these guys that they have is probably going to have to outperform what people think they are. But at running back, honestly, I really see the good argument for that happening, just because injury and people fall off like so quickly at the position.
Yeah, the more I look at this, I didn't realize also the QB is another
Mm.
position where he didn't invest much, right? So he
Hmm.
didn't keep Tua, did he? I don't remember.
No, he did. He did.
He did. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
So he
he was
came in
considering
with
it.
both
Yeah.
of those. Okay, never mind then.
Hmm.
So then with that strategy, you're right. Then it was supposed to be the probably running back where he puts the money in, but he didn't do that. He
I was
just
actually
went for Diggs.
shocked
Yeah. He went for
at the
Diggs.
Derek Carr bidding. I didn't understand that at all. $18 Derek Carr, especially when
Right.
I
If you
think that he
put
has
that
very
Derek
solid
Carr money,
QBs.
right. If you
Interesting.
put that Derek Carr money towards, the James Conner money and end up with a, better running back on paper and then just go with, whatever kind of cheaper QB3 was left out there, I think that could have probably been a configuration for this team that I would have liked more, but maybe they have some concerns about Tua's health, which is kind of valid, I guess, or maybe they think Dan Jones um, could regress back to
No,
kind of what he
no,
was
Daniel
before.
Jones to the moon. He's solid. Everyone knows that.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that too. But or maybe they saw something in Derek Carr
Yeah.
that he was maybe being underutilized at
The
his
new
previous
muscles.
location.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's jacked.
Everybody's seen the biceps. So I
Yeah,
mean,
he's jacked, man.
yeah. So maybe they saw some like huge undervalue, but yeah, at least on paper, like to the untrained eye, it does seem like 18 for Carr when you do have Tua and Dan Jones. Does seem like a little bit of overpay when you could have put that to James Conner's 15 or Gibson's 12 or something to maybe get a slightly sexier running back too. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting to watch. Who starts every week? Is it going to be matchups or is there a clear pecking order? While some people might think like two guys are clearly better in that group, other teams might not, and they might be right. So it should be interesting to see how they handle that going forward.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We do know that this will be five wide. I mean, this will be
Yeah, it has to be.
there's definitely going to be five, but it is just that
Mhm.
one RB slot that he's got to figure
Right.
out on a week to week basis. And yeah, again, it's looking like these strong teams, they have weaknesses. I mean, I
Hmm.
didn't realize. I thought this team was just stacked. But
Hmm.
the more we look and the more we can nitpick, it's great. We can figure out some of the weaknesses
Hmm.
here of these teams. I think it's really interesting. And different strategies too, right? Clearly, he doesn't value that RB2 slot as much as maybe some other people would.
Yeah, I
Um,
think we'll see a lot of copycat if this team is really successful, where
right.
he threw a bunch of kind of like cheap-ish dart throws at running backs after his first guy, and he's just betting that one of them rise to the challenge, and then he's I think fully planning on five wide every week, which hasn't been that widely used of a strategy. I know teams have done it in previous years before, but if we see this one be successful, I could definitely see teams just outright going for that kind of like team build right off the bat instead of kind of just falling into it.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to follow this team this year. Um, let's go to Mars. So I keep putting you guys on the spot, so I'll put a little bit of setup, so I don't just throw you guys in. But with Mars, we saw a completely different keeper strategy than I think what we've seen before, right? Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, huge contracts.
Yeah.
They're going to be in the Mars future for the foreseeable future, whether that's on the
Hmm.
team or dead cap. I mean, I'm not trying to say they're terrible. They're both good. I'm not trying to say they're terrible and they're
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
be cut later. But 5 years is a long time, right? And I think this is the first time we've seen such a contract be given in the league. So it's pretty exciting, and we're going to see how that carries through. And then he's also got Anthony Richardson, who's pretty interesting as well to round out that room with the QBs. I wonder what he thought about going into the draft because he had a lot of money as well, just from
Hmm.
those contracts alone. There's a lot of space, a lot of roster spots, and this is the final product where he ends up with a guy like Joe Mixon, backed up by Brees Hall, and then he's got a couple of interesting wide receivers, kind of around that mid-level. DJ Moore, some returning names, right? DJ Moore, Debo
Hmm.
Samuels, DeAndre Hopkins. So, yeah, Dustin, you want to add more on what his strategy is, and what do you think about this team?
Right. So speaking of copycat, it'll be harder to copycat this strategy, but I think we will see it more if it does pay off. He went in with only two keepers. That's pretty much as low as we've seen a team go into a season with, and one the 5 year and one 3 year. Um, definitely a very different strategy than what a lot of other teams have done in the past, and I think the new dead cap rules really kind of make it a little bit less prohibitive to lock yourselves into like these long deals. And if Fields does pay off to be the player that Mars probably thinks he can be, like he never goes over $42 for the life of his 5 year contract. That could be a huge value to them for sure. So I think they were definitely leaning into kind of like, oh, like let's explore that long term contract space that it definitely hasn't been really fleshed out yet. No one's really done it to the extent that he has. I know Jamar Chase has a long contract, but this is even one step longer. And I think like in some way, if the actual auction draft doesn't have a lot of keeper inflation, it's actually good to only keep two guys and really keep a lot of roster spots open for getting some deals that just fall through because if the keepers aren't providing enough value, then the auction is actually just going to be cheaper than some of the bad keepers even. So I think that was definitely a strategy going in. We definitely see a shift in a strategy where the highest paid player on his team is Joe Mixon for 44. He's definitely got burned in the past with some really really big single season contracts for guys. So I think he did spread his money really wide. And I guess it'll come down to whether he spread his money for the right players, and that'll really be what it comes down to. But I think if Hurts, I mean Hurts is definitely gonna be Hurts, but if Fields is as good as some people think he can be, I think that's probably the biggest point. Like everything else, like sure there are gonna be some hits, there are gonna be some misses, and like that happens, but he has staked a lot on Justin Fields, and that's pretty much I think what his season will hinge on.
Yeah, absolutely. Diaz, you got anything to add?
Okay, if these guys had not if these guys had just been on the field and played without injury or any contract situation, Jonathan Taylor and Brees Hall, where would they rank week one on an RB 2 and 3, 3 and 4?
Yep.
Like, I don't want to attribute too much of an overall strategy to John because John is John. No one can know what's going on in his mind. But this, to me, when you look at those two draft picks and add in that he drafted Kyler Murray, you wonder if there's an idea here that's like, I need to fill a lot of roster spots. I'm going to take the guys who are suppressed by, things that maybe I don't believe are as serious as others do. And when they hit, when one or two of them hits, I'm going to come out way out in front. I'm going to look great for that. Because certainly, I mean, between those three, and I think it's a shame that he traded Kyler. I think that he could have gotten a lot more for Kyler if, certain things went certain ways. But with the two he has remaining, those two running backs, the sky's the limit. And it might not be too long before we're seeing Brees Hall at full strength, or I mean, maybe I'm optimistic because I have Jonathan Taylor in Dynasty, but maybe, just maybe, he's playing for the Colts this year and he's looking like the old JT.
Yeah, I mean, again, we talk about that high risk, high reward. This again, right? I think you're talking about the reward, but there's risk, and there's a reason why those players were drafted later than they usually would. And Brees, he's great, he's phenomenal, but he is realistically recovering from that injury, so it's going to take time.
It could be a while until
Yeah.
he's like that full strength guy.
It might be later this season. We never know, but generally takes a season. He could be different too.
Yeah.
That's another thing, right? Brees could really spit in the face of that. And then Jonathan Taylor, we don't know. We have that no one can even say, right? Like we just have no clue what's gonna happen. And then even just like Anthony Richardson himself, like that guy is just tantalizing. Could be QB1. Could be QB31. Yeah, he could be anywhere. Yeah, he could be this year. I'm talking about. He could be anywhere. Like, so
I mean, it wouldn't be the craziest thing for sure. I will say,
we'll see.
Kyler was tough for him to hold for much longer because he does have Hurts and Fields who are never coming off the field unless they're hurt or on bye. Richardson, who he can't trade for 4 weeks, and he's not going to trade him probably until like he's either a bust or the best player in the world. So like holding 4 quarterbacks like on his roster for a long period of time would have been tough. I do think he probably maybe didn't maximize his return on that. Maybe he probably should have just let somebody else win him in the draft and like gone for something else of similar.
As the person who bid 9, I agree. He should have let somebody else win him.
Yeah, I mean, also, at 9, it would have been really like tantalizing with the no risk at any point. But yeah, I do think Jonathan Taylor at 26, if you think about it, I don't know, maybe we're kind of too scared of the situation. But like, I think even if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play this year, I don't think he'll regret having spent 26. I think that's like a worthy risk, like no matter what the outcome is. So that one, I'm like, I think that was like, especially that the fact that he has Hull, like, maybe he just has kind of like 2 pieces that kind of protect him there. The Brees thing, like 38 isn't super cheap, and they do have Dalvin Cook, so it might be a split. I do know that when Brees Hall is healthy, and if he's getting enough touches, I think he has, running back 1 in the whole league talent. So, I definitely can't fault him for, taking a swing at that. But yeah, to me, I think Taylor is the one that he's more likely to get like huge upside on. Whereas Hall is probably priced around what, the average expected outcome could be for him. 38 isn't super cheap. If he was a little bit cheaper, I might have been like, very, very envious. But yeah, I could be completely wrong. Dalvin Cook could be completely cooked and, just there to kind of be a mentor, and, Brees Hall could be a top 3 running back like this year. So like Wankyu likes to say, we'll have to see. It could really be something where we're all slapping ourselves and being like, oh, how did we let, an obvious talent like Brees Hall only go for 38? Like, it definitely could be that kind of situation.
It's going to be fascinating. This team is another one of those fun teams. It's going to be interesting every week.
It's just like Orange County. Like I can't tell you if they're gonna win it. I can't tell you if they're gonna be last place, but it's gonna be fun no matter what. All the outcomes in between.
Agree, and I think it could be one of those teams that have like a 220 some week, and then like a 130 or the next week. It's gonna fluctuate all over the place, I think.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to. I want to do us 3 last. So who else is there? Let's go Williston. Is that let's go Williston here. All right, so Williston, they had a lot of contracts. I saw when I was looking at the sheet coming. Yeah. I mean, they didn't need to make many selections. I think a lot of the picks were made for them already, and I thought they came out with a pretty good draft, pretty good team, looking really solid here. I think it's going to be interesting with all of those QBs. I think that's the first thing that stands out to me. The Aaron Rodgers, he's brought over Kenny Pickett, and then he's got Baker Mayfield, Jimmy Garoppolo, and it's looking like Baker's starting this week, which is also interesting, I think.
Really?
But like this team, I think, is fairly balanced, right? So you've got your CeeDee Lamb coming as a keeper. You add a Devontae Adams. So you've got your wide receiver set. You've got your running backs who aren't, you don't have like the huge RB1, but you have balance again. You have the Gibbs, the Javonte Williams, and the Cam Akers. So TJ Hawkinson also really good. I believe he was a keeper as well. So just up and down, I think you've got no holes, which is, I think, very valuable in the league. So I think it's one of the stronger teams this year. What do you think, Diaz?
I'm very interested in Devontae Adams. I feel like we're dropping him the industry in general dropped him in the ranks. Last year in the HFFL, I believe he was the number 2 scorer at wide receiver, and you could argue that he got a quarterback downgrade. But I mean, I'm not a big fan of Derek Carr. Maybe people really feel like there's a big difference between Carr and Garoppolo. I don't. So I think Chu did very well here with Devontae. I'm less excited about Pat Freiermuth. I don't really understand that pick. And if I recall correctly, maybe it was later in the draft where spend your money or you're not gonna have many more chances to spend it. And of course I know we defer to Chu on matters of tight end, but he's got an excellent tight end in TJ Hawkinson, and I really think if you were gonna spend you had a little bit of a stack left, I would have picked maybe a player at any other position. That's a really strange pick to me.
Yeah, I have to also remind myself, he's got Miles Sanders on the bench as well. I mean, so again, balance and depth. I think that's what this team is going for. Maybe that's what he wanted at tight end as well. Maybe he thought he needed a backup there, a serviceable one that could replace Hawkinson if something happens. But
what I always say, and this comes back to Madison as well.
Yeah,
I want to avoid a situation where every week I'm having to make a tough call in the lineup. I'd rather have maybe this is common sense, but the depth is valuable when something happens. But if you can't really predict who's going to go down on your team, it's really hard to have to choose between these two. You've got 2 quality options, and if you could have had something better that's more consistent of a starter, there's a ton of value in that, in my view.
Right. You're saying maximize the starting lineup. You don't need the bench. But the flip side,
you don't need the marginal. You don't need the marginal bench option. That's much
exactly.
Unless you're investing nothing in it, like money wise, then that's fine. But I get what he's saying. Like 13 for Freiermuth when he's not in line to be your starter. So that seems like you could have spent that on a guy that's actually going to start. So yeah, I understand what point is. Yeah.
Plus, to add on, there's pain when you choose the wrong guy. Oh man, and if that costs you the win too, that's the worst. And that happens. That happens a lot more than you think. And so if you don't have that backup option, then you don't even have to think about that. You just say, "Oh, wouldn't have had the chance to do that, right? Wasn't me. It wasn't my fault." Instead, it was this dirty, dirty TJ Hawkinson who didn't outscore Fryermuth, or other way around, whatever, right? So that's what happens there. I was going to say, it is a long season though, so you have to account for things that will happen. This lineup is not going to look the same, even 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So you have to see what it will be like. But I see both sides, honestly. I think they're both valuable. They're both great strategies. Heading into week 1, especially, you probably do want a really stacked starting lineup. But yeah, Dustin, add on to Williston's team here.
Yeah. So I just want to point out, like, Williston got dealt a pretty bad hand in terms of like how their keepers ended up maturing. Obviously, Cam Akers, everyone knows how he got hurt. Javonte Williams also, pretty devastating injury. Brees Hall was probably in line to be, a 2-year keeper for them if he didn't get hurt, but that led to like the Dalvin Cook signing, and they kind of just threw him back. Like, this team could have been, even stronger if some of those things didn't go wrong. And to add on to it, they also had Deshaun Watson, I guess, 2 years ago, and they basically got nothing back for what was one of the better keepers at the time. So, like, if you consider all that his keepers have endured, it's actually pretty surprising that he's come out with a team, I think, that is as strong and well-rounded as it is. You look at the top wide receiver, Adams, Lamb, and then Terry McLaurin as your third. Like, that seems really, like, balanced and in line with what you'd expect out of a pretty good starting wide receiver core. I think Cooks and Van Jefferson even have a good amount of upside and interestingness at the end of that. And like, Javonte might take a while to get going, but if he does, I think their running backs should be okay enough. Definitely not as strong as like you might have hoped going into the season. But Gibbs, I think we saw a lot of interesting stuff, and like if he explodes, like, this is definitely a team that should be contending for playoffs. As to the tight end thing, yeah, I do see it both ways. I do think, like, in the first 3 weeks, like, you're just gonna have a $13 player or a $10 keeper that isn't starting probably, or if he is, it probably isn't ideal. But also at the same time, tight end is one of those weird positions where, it takes one injury to Kelsey or Andrews or Kittle. One of those guys goes down for a bit, and then that team has to play the tight end waiver wire, and all of a sudden, like, you have a guy that you could probably just trade in for as interesting of a wide receiver. So I don't think that's that big of an issue. As long as Fryermuth, turns out to be as good as maybe this price tag is. Maybe that's probably the part that maybe Diaz and maybe even I would disagree with. But if he is, like, a top 6 tight end option, I feel like this won't be too bad of a problem to have. But overall, I gotta say, like, coming into this draft, I didn't expect this team to really be able to put it together to, like, this extent. Like, I just thought they had a lot of disadvantages with getting hit with all the penalties for being in last place last year. Javonte Williams, kind of pricey for coming off an injury. A lot. He suffered a lot of, I think, bad news, and to have this team where I'm, like, fairly excited about it, I think that's a pretty good thing. I will say I don't really understand having 4 quarterbacks when 2 of them are Baker and Jimmy G. Like, I don't think, like, you're keeping them for, like, a huge breakout potential. So probably not bad to, like, I trade one off or play waivers for an interesting guy that could help you at maybe running back, because I do think it's a little bit weaker there. But I was really impressed, and I do think this is, like, a top half team, if just barely. And we'll see how some of the tight end stuff plays out.
Yeah, I think it should be one of those steady, consistent teams, probably in the middle of the pack. And I think the downside is that you've got this balance, but you don't have that true superstar. So if one of these guys is not as good, then it could be a lot of trouble. But I think, you could make up for it. We'll see. There could be some steps forward for Gibbs, maybe Pickett, maybe Miles Sanders in that new offense. So a couple of things can break out the right way and really push us over the top and get them into a contending status for this year. So I'm going to be interested in seeing how this team goes as well. Let's go to Yonkers.
Yep.
All right. So Yonkers with that $70 Christian McCaffrey coming in. I'm just laughing a little bit because I'm wondering how much he would have gone for in the auction. Would we have seen another one of those ridiculous prices? But we don't know because Jay put that franchise tag and then carried him through. We've got some interesting QBs here. So he doesn't have that investment, right? He's got Jared Goff and Bryce Young, his rookie pick. And then he's got a balanced wide receiver squad. Again, a little bit of balance there with Keenan Allen, Drake London, DK Metcalf. Aaron Jones is backing up Christian McCaffrey. You've got some interesting names with Rashad White. I really love Devonta Smith in that flex spot, so it's looking good. Oh, and he's got Matthew Stafford, so he's just not starting him for this week, how much did Jared Goff get? I don't even know on Thursday. 21, not bad. So, yeah, it's a good start.
Okay,
yeah, it's not terrible. Not going to sink your week. So,
Yep.
another one of these teams with a little bit of balance. I think there's a lot of interesting names in the bench as well. I loved how everyone froze on A.J. Dillon on that $2 bid. Just like actual freeze, not like, a site freeze. But, Dustin, do you have thoughts on Yonkers?
I do want. I am curious as to Diaz when he gets a chance to comment on this. Whether he had McCaffrey getting tagged before keepers were submitted or not. Like, because it was something that I wasn't thinking of, and then when it happened, I was like, yeah, I guess it. Yeah, I really just had no idea what that type of running back would go for. But in hindsight, it looks perfectly fine. I'm just curious to see if he saw it coming, but yeah, I mean, you look at the running backs and wide receivers, and it's really pretty strong for, like how, there's maybe no number one guy at like wide receiver, but like Metcalf, Keenan Allen, Drake London, Devontae Smith, Christian Kirk, that's 5 guys that should probably be starting like nearly every week, right? So maybe this is a team that goes 5 wide off the bat, but then the running backs aren't, as, like if you see the upside in Rashad White, like you could have definitely gotten away with him as a flex. So, and he was kept. So it is interesting what they've built out at running back and wide receiver. It is going to really come down to if Stafford has probably like a kind of bounce back year. He's heavily discounted, I think, at $6. And probably for good reason. He's not young. His supporting cast, I don't think is very strong, but when he's healthy, like I feel like he's just consistently been more than a $6 player. And while I don't think he'll be an advantage for this team at QB2, I also don't think they need much of one if the strength of their running back and wide receivers just kind of like keep them steady there, because I do think they have a really like pretty like I don't think a lot can go wrong, outside of injury for his top 2 running backs and his top 5 wide receivers. Like, sure, there will be guys that get hurt or underperform, but I think as far as things go, that's a pretty reliable group to have. And then if Goff and one of the other quarterbacks can be close to average, I think this team could actually make some noise.
Yeah. Diaz, your thoughts on this team?
It's funny that Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford are on this team together. I saw somebody on Twitter say that the Rams and the Lions should trade back because their teams are now in like totally the opposite places where they were when they made that trade initially.
Oh man.
But looking at it, Stafford, Keenan Allen, and Aaron Jones were three of the big players that Yonkers came out of this draft with, and they're three guys who you look at them and you say these guys have had great years in the past. They should have gone for more. And the reason they went for more is what Dustin said. They're all a little older. A couple of them have a little bit more competition now. But certainly with Keenan Allen, you could see, he's going to get 130 targets from, Justin Herbert in this revamped offense that everyone's excited about. And, you could see the path. I fear that this could go very wrong just because of age and some of these guys getting phased out or getting injured. But I think it's a viable strategy. I hope that it's exciting to root for a young guy, even if he's just running wind sprints out there. It's a little tougher when it's older guys and, you could see the signs of the age, so it might not be as fun to watch. But if these guys are healthy and on the field and playing the roles that they've played in the past, you've got a strong team here.
Yeah, I think we've been commenting a lot about the running back and the wide receiver and the ratio here. Definitely much more investment in the running backs with Jay on this Yonkers squad. And I think that's traditionally what he's liked to do. So it's kind of the same thing again. He's put a lot of auction dollars into that. The wide receivers aren't terrible, right? But it's going to get by. I think it's going to be pretty balanced as, again, consistent contribution. So we'll see. I think it's going to come down to the QBs. Like, is Bryce Young or Stafford going to be... Jared Goff is going to be the QB2, right? But are you going to have two QB2s, or is there someone who can get up to that QB1 status on this roster?
Young needs to either be way ahead of schedule and, be pretty good right away, or Stafford needs to be kind of holding off that expected age drop, and he's got a lot of miles in that now, so like
it's going to be really tough without Cup. Yeah,
exactly with no Cup too. Like it's
his weapons are
one of
very
those is going to have to happen for this team to really kind of be in the mix. But all things considered, I think pretty interesting, like, running back wide receiver set. Not in that like they're interesting players, but like the build is like kind of very balanced, and it seems like most of these guys are. I don't think they're gonna flop like completely and not be startable. I think a lot of teams have like guys in their top, 5 plus like 7 running back wide receiver options. I think guys have guys that could be completely unstartable this year. But this team seems to have kind of like 7 guys between running back and wide receiver that should be startable, which I think is different from a lot of teams, but. It is going to come down to, I think, the Young being ahead of schedule, or Stafford kind of holding off the age. Like, that's probably what they need to really make some noise.
I think realistically, and don't take this the wrong way, Jay, Yonkers, but it seems like it's one of these teams that are taking 1 year, and then next year it's going to be that really contending year. I think there's a lot of interesting names, but they're going to be kept, I think, into the next year. They're continuing to grow and continue to be getting into that superstar status, but probably for this year, it probably will be tough. I mean, again, maybe middle of the pack, but on the lower end, I think is what I'm seeing. But I don't know if you guys agree, disagree before I move on here.
No, I agree. The good thing is, though, like, I think a lot of these pieces are, again, pretty flexible trade-wise.
Yeah.
Other than McCaffrey, I think McCaffrey, if he's having a really, really good year, it'll be, pretty easy to move him. But if Yonkers is selling at the deadline, there might be a chance that McCaffrey's kind of just okay, which would make the 70 probably harder for teams to work with. But we'll have to see. Like, I could see it going well for them, but that flexibility will, I think, pay off either way.
Yeah, I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see. Jay's asking what happened to me being on the fence.
Yeah.
Let's. I think that's everyone else except us three. So
except us, yep.
I think it's me first, right? It's Great Kills up here. Let's go to you. Your team first, Dustin. And I mean, this one was so interesting for me to watch because of the Mahomes-Kelsey stack that you set up before this draft. So you're already what? That's a lot of money. I don't know how much, but it was a lot of money already kind of locked into that stack. which is a wonderful stack, right? It's not. There's nothing to laugh at from there.
I mean, I didn't see it week one.
Well, that's also true. That's unfortunate, and that's the nature of the game, right? It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
that's sometimes what happens. You also had Geno Smith and Damian Pierce. Just trying to remember, and then you filled out a pretty good squad here. I think really interesting. Wait, so how did you get Tony Pollard again? What was that again? Oh, you kept him. Okay, yeah, sorry.
We traded for him with the Pacheco and the wide receiver George Pickens, and we threw two second round picks. So basically, yeah, when we didn't love our chances of getting running back one, so we basically tried to look for a trade to get us there.
I see. And
Oh yeah,
pick him up from keepers.
Just to explain further, like I guess we're kind of old school. Like a lot of teams are going like, zero RB or whatever. But I think for us, we still like how powerful running backs can be. When they're good. There are obviously a lot of bad cases and downsides where they get hurt and you feel like your whole season is just kind of like blown. But I guess we trend a little bit more old school, and we still do value having like that week to week guy that gets guaranteed touches, and you don't have to worry about like game script as much. So we went out and got Pollard, and then like you said, the Mahomes Kelsey stack was huge. I'm pretty sure, like almost certain that Travis Kelsey would have gone for less than 76, but at the same time, like it was so much easier to plan for how we would spread out our team and stuff, because like we had quarterback and tight end set. We just kind of like went through and really hammered down like the running backs and wide receivers that we really liked, and we definitely don't have a wide receiver one like right off the start, like definitely not a guy that you would point to and be like, oh yeah, this is a guy in the top tier. But I think we had a strategy of taking like a couple guys that were more known quantities, and then really hammered some guys that we think could make jumps, and we're willing to turn through them like really quickly if it doesn't happen. So we're probably going to be pretty aggressive on waivers to start. So yeah, that was overall our strategy. I'm curious to see what Diaz thought about it.
Very impressed with your patience. I believe Alvin Kamara was the 31st player off the board. You were the last team to win an auction, to win a bid. Kamara was your first player that you drafted. And, I spent a lot of time looking at your team because you had no wide receivers. And I said, how are they going to put this together? They have to be patient. It's going to be difficult. I mean, obviously it's extra difficult for me. I always get a guy within like the first 3 picks. So like I think you really pulled it off. I think the receivers you have are all good value. Obviously Tony doesn't look as good as he did 5 days ago, but
Oh my god.
That was one of the worst games.
Jesus.
But yeah, I mean, I'm curious what you think of Kamara, because you went a lot higher than I had him. And what's your expectation for him when he comes back from his suspension?
So we did, I think, specifically like Kamara probably better than most people. He has been saying that, I mean, every player says stuff like this, so like, take it with a grain of salt. But he has said like he wasn't physically right last year, and if that's a big reason why his efficiency dropped off and stuff. We think it could be, a huge value if, he bounces back physically. Age-wise, he does have, good amount of touches on his on his history, but not super old where you think like he can't, make that jump back to a little bit of a prime left. So I do recognize we were higher on him, but I really just believe in his skill set when he is healthy. It could just be purely age-related decline, and maybe we'll look worse off for it. But we're betting on that. Just pure talent-wise, he has the skill to be, a really reliable top 15 running back when he does come back. And we did want to take, one guy that wasn't gonna play right away because we think in the early weeks, less bye weeks, less injuries in theory. It's a good strategy, I think, to have a guy that that you're gonna have to like kind of hold on a bench spot for the first 3-4 weeks, and then once the bye weeks and start happening, then they'll be there to like fill in depth or step up and be a starter or whatever. So that's basically what we were thinking there. I guess in terms of wide receiver, definitely not strong at the top, but Kelsey is supposed to basically be a wide receiver one, and then like our fourth wide receiver on paper is supposed to be what other teams have at tight end. And if you look at it that way, I don't think it was that bad. But obviously Kelsey missing week one really makes the whole roster look a little bit thinner and weaker than it really is. And our strategy was like if Michael Thomas or if Odell or Romeo Dobbs or Tony, if one of those guys turns out to be like pretty good, because that's our equivalent of other teams' tight end. Like their ceilings, I think, are higher than most other teams' tight ends, and then we would have Kelsey as the wide receiver one, and then basically the rest of our wide receivers would be all slotted in, and then whoever theoretically does break out would be basically our tight end if we were comparing to other teams. So that was basically our thinking. Kelsey being hurt week one, not ideal, but that's the nature of the game.
Because we saw it hurts Mahomes too. That's the thing. It's
exactly.
like the whole offense is totally different.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's how football goes. The guy that hasn't gotten hurt since like 2013 gets hurt. The first year you actually get to own him. So that wasn't fun or exciting, but if it isn't a long-term injury, I think we can work around it, and I feel pretty good about some of the upside pieces. Maybe one of them breaking out, and if not, we're pretty ready to go to work on waivers pretty early. So
yeah,
should be interesting to watch.
They badly needed Kelsey. Like that was that was a terrible.
Honestly, it makes me more confident that Kelsey will be good as long as he's healthy, just because like that offense is like so hapless without him. Like
it was so bad.
With no Juju, like he might just get like even more work than last year, which is pretty insane. But he's got to get healthy, and he's not young. So
no.
I understand why people might have some reservations on him at that price tag. But this was the year that our last year of Mahomes control. We wanted to kind of put together the mega stack and see what we could build around it. And not everything went perfect, obviously, but we generally, I think, executed our plan to surround them with pieces that have good potential in our view.
I mean, I love the Pollard. I think he's going to be amazing. I mean, this is what everyone's saying too. Everyone's saying he's going to be like RB1 or whatever. So he's finally got that backfield to himself. The other thing that I want to ask you is you've got like 5 guys from the Saints. So are you really in on the Saints this year?
No, we actually don't love that at all. But, Jamal Williams is basically Kamara insurance, or until Kamara comes back to have a guy that we could start. Juwan Johnson only got on our team because Kelsey got hurt, and that's the guy we ended up with. And Michael Thomas, a guy that we think has potential because he's been so injured, but you see flashes of it still when he does play. But I mean, you just can't rely on him for anything because he gets hurt all the time. But that one, we just kind of thought there might be some upside if he does, for some reason, stay healthy. But yeah, definitely not by design, and it is ugly to look at the team and be like, wait, what? We have 5 Saints? Like, why? Definitely not how we want it. But I expect if Kamara looks good enough, we trade or cut Jamal Williams, Thomas is either going to be hurt in week 3 or an actual viable starter. And Juwan Johnson really is only here probably until Kelsey is good to go. So it's definitely not something we plan on having long term.
True.
We pride ourselves on attaching ourselves to good offenses like Kansas City or San Francisco, not New Orleans in 2023. That is not what we strive to be
I mean,
in great kills. But
you don't even have Olave, right? You have like anyways,
we
yeah.
don't have the one piece that people would actually be excited to have. We have pretty much all the scrappy pieces around them, but it is definitely very temporary.
Yeah.
It'll be gone soon, so just bear with us. But
it's only 4, by the way.
That's our strategy. Yeah,
I miscounted. It's 4. Also, I never knew this, but Jamal Williams is the same age as Alvin Kamara. Didn't know that.
Jamal Williams feels like he's like over 30, and
that's
Kamara
crazy.
feels like he's like only like 27. But yeah. They are the same exact age.
And then last thing, like you keep talking about the injury, and like as I keep looking at this, I'm like, oh man, a lot of these guys have gotten injured. Like you look at the Mike Williams,
sure.
you look at these are guys who are brittle. So
for Mike Thomas and Odell for sure, I think we'll find out pretty soon, like if their bodies are just completely past it, and we're very very prepared for the fact that it completely might be. They both missed a ton of time. They're both 30 or a little bit over 30. Like we're very ready for that. So it'll actually, I think, help us be flexible on waivers like pretty soon, as and if not, maybe we'll see something interesting out of them. So that part is good. Mike Williams, Godwin's also gone through a bunch of injuries. Gabe Davis was hurt all of last year. But I mean, that's the reason they went like so cheap, right?
Right.
A fully healthy Mike Williams is probably worth more than 16.
True.
Fully healthy Chris Godwin, even with a bad QB, is probably worth more than 16. So yeah, we're well aware that these guys could just get hurt or have down years because they're dealing with injury. But I also do our strategy is to keep building wide and keep just having good guys to step up around them. Maybe that'll be Zay Flowers, maybe Dobbs, maybe someone off waivers.
Goodbye, Tony.
Goodbye,
Tony.
Tony, if he applies some stick into his hand.
Oh boy! All right. Well, yeah. Let's move on from that. So brutal. I did not expect that. That was crazy. Let's go to New England. So I'll open it up for you guys to ask me questions before I talk about my team in full detail. But just to set it up a little bit, I think my keepers were just bummed off of a lot of other teams. So including yours, Diaz. I picked up Dotson and Watson from you. I did have Cooper. I picked up Herbert from Madison. Who else did I get? Oh, and then Madison I also took from Mars. So that's what I entered with into the draft. Had a lot of money, right, going in, and then spent it on a familiar face, Lamar Jackson, and then added a couple of new faces in here as well. So I'll open it up to you first, Diaz, on your thoughts on my team, or questions too.
Yeah, let's talk about QB2. Brock and Mac. I've heard Brock Purdy described as the luckiest QB ever after some people looked at his tape last year and certain interceptions that were not intercepted. How are you? I know you rostered him last year, so obviously you're a fan. How good are you feeling about that position?
I think it's gonna be fine. I mean, it's not amazing, but I hope that Lamar is gonna carry that QB position as usual, be one of the top QBs. Because if Brock is just like a middling QB2 or QB3, whatever, I still want that Lamar, QB1 season. So I think more for me, the question's on Lamar. Like I actually think the pressure is more on him than Purdy. Purdy, I want him to be anywhere from 18 to 24, in that range. Just do your job. He's gonna get the ball to his amazing weapons. There's a lot, and even if they get hurt, he'll still distribute the ball. But
just don't get benched is the Purdy thing. I mean, he's got Sam Darnold on his heels.
Oh, that's fair.
Darnold, that's true.
That's fair. I'm also hoping. I mean, if that happens, Mac Jones can, with the new real offensive coordinator, he could maybe give you that, right? So I'm hoping someone anywhere. I feel like that's replaceable value, right? Like you can find someone.
Yeah.
But it's Lamar. I need him to be that 30 point, 35 every week. Like I need that. Well, that's where my concerns are actually.
Yeah, for Purdy, I think his like week to week upside is probably just capped because I think that defense
Yeah.
is going to keep scores fairly low. But his floor is probably pretty decent just because like I think he's a solid like player wise, like maybe not as good as like he was last year in terms of like avoiding turnovers and stuff. But I think he does have what it takes to just hold on to the job as long as like injury isn't affecting him. So his floor should be pretty high because he does have a lot of weapons around him. He'll probably just turn out like a. I mean, you just won't look at him too often. He'll never be the reason that you won your week really, and he probably won't be the reason that you lost your week most weeks either. So that part is fine. I do think, Lamar Jackson being MVP level takes this team to an actual contender. Lamar Jackson being, just kind of like what he's been the last few years, probably has his team looking just outside, just outside the playoff picture. There's a lot of reason to think that Lamar could be MVP level. Everybody's been talking about the new offense, just the pace being, higher with a lot more passing plays. I think the potential is still there, and it could even open up, his legs so that, maybe he's running less often, but he's still getting like, pretty high value, runs, maybe some broken plays that he extends and keeps it going. So yeah, to me, I thought this team had to get Lamar Jackson, and I was prepared for them to go, honestly up to like over 70 pretty easily for Lamar if it came
Yeah.
to it. So when you guys got him for 62, I knew that was going to open up your draft a little bit to get maybe a little bit more than you could have realistically even budgeted for. I think Derrick Henry is also another like he is kind of just old enough where you might think, okay, like this could be the drop off season. But when he's been healthy, like he's been, just so involved and like he is their whole offense. And I do think like a lot of your keepers weren't like the sexiest, like Herbert, like Madison, even Amari Cooper is kind of like not super exciting to a lot of people at this point. But like having to only spend like the amounts that you did on those guys is actually a really solid base. So you have the base for if Lamar Jackson and Henry hit their ceiling type of performances, like this team is going to be, really, really good and a threat to watch out for. I think like probably at some point, maybe you do upgrade your 2B2 if, you really think it's worth it, but I don't expect, Brock or Mac to really be holding you down that much. It might be something that you look towards, but like for now, like I think it was important for you to get Lamar Jackson, which you're not going to be able to replicate in pretty much any other type of money you spend. And Derrick Henry, maybe not my favorite running back one option just because of the age, but you can't deny when he's healthy and like if he's not dropping off because of age, like that's one of the steadiest week to week players you can get. So, I mean, it really is kind of built off those two players. Everything else, I think you've built a good enough foundation to like support them if they're good. But if they're bad, then this could go ugly really quick, obviously.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. It really is up to those two guys. Yeah, we didn't really want the Derrick Henry, but it ended up being that way as I think he was the last guy. I can't remember, but I think during the draft we were talking like, oh man, I think we have to get Henry, and like, crap,
Yeah,
god damn it,
like,
but that's what happens.
Chubb went for 63, and that probably would have been a safer pick just because he's younger. But Henry, when he's been healthy, this has been like a top 2 or 3 running back pretty much. So if he's and he's such an outlier in terms of like physically what he is that like age curves probably don't apply to him as much. Could be that he drops off completely or he doesn't, but like he probably kind of operates outside of that traditional age curve looking thing. So definitely gonna rely a lot on those two players though, probably more than any other team.
Yes.
You guys are relying on those two guys, and I see the upside case for both of them honestly. So in my mind, I'm kind of considering this to be like, slightly above a middle of the pack team for now. And then like, if Lamar really does take it to another level, like, you'll have plenty of firepower, I think, week to week.
Yeah, and I think the other concern I have is with my wide receivers. So I haven't spent much there. Just looking at the makeup, it's not much investment. I don't have a true wide receiver one, and that could be a problem. I mean, I hope that one of them is a real wide receiver one, but already one of the hopes is on my IR, so like, like that kind of sucks. But yeah, like I'm hoping that I find someone who can rise and become a top wide receiver, and that would really put us as a true contender, because right now I think we still need someone to break out for us. Otherwise, this isn't gonna go anywhere. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. Yeah.
I'm putting too much stock into the Puka Nakua top 20 wide receiver Kool-Aid that I've been sipping.
Oh, wow.
That's why I'm a little bit higher on your team. But yeah, you're right that like if you look at it, if Watson kind of does like flop, which I like, he's kind of like Will Fuller, like I said.
Yeah.
Like, when he plays, you're like, man, this guy's like game breaking. He just like rips off like 40-yard catches like it's nothing. But then like sometimes they're like injured, sometimes like there's a lot of availability issues. Even last year, Watson missed like half the season before he broke out, right?
Yeah.
So definitely a little bit of a concern, but you definitely do also have one of those guys that could be a top 10 receiver at the end of the year, and like it'll look obvious by then. But yeah, the injury isn't a great way to start off, as you
Not at
and
all.
I can attest to. But if he gets healthy, and like I think just his talent for that big play is so apparent that like when he plays, like you'll feel really good about having him. If he constantly just deals with like nagging hamstrings or stuff like that, then maybe you'll be like, maybe we shouldn't have even given him the 2 years. But yeah, you're right. That's the other, I think, flex point. Like it's Henry, Jackson, and Watson. Like if Watson plays as well as he can and stays healthy, I actually think like you're fine at wide receiver. But if he's battling hamstrings all year, then yeah, you don't have a lot there relative to some other teams.
Yeah, it's like what I keep saying, right? With these teams that are more balanced, have depth, they don't have that true superstar. So if they don't get any superstar contributions, then you're not gonna do well, right? So yeah, it's gonna be we'll see. It's my favorite phrase. We'll see. Diaz, any last questions before we move on?
Long time listeners are already drunk off their the we'll see drinking game.
There's I'm trying to pace it out for you, but
I know people are probably way passed out. But yeah, Diaz, if you have anything to add to
no, I mean you nailed it. I like the receivers. I mean, obviously, I like the guys I traded to you.
Dotson, I think is very underrated.
Yeah, he is.
There's a lot of good stuff on tape, so he's going to be exciting to watch this year. Hopefully, they can get him the ball.
Exactly. Yep, that's the main concern. Okay, let's finish off with Sandy Pines. Well, I think
that everybody is calling the best team, right?
Yes, I think it is the best team. Let's find out why after the break. No, I'm just kidding. What? But I think it goes back to what you're saying, Dustin, because this is again one of those modern, new. Well, Bijan is the running back one, right? So I know I've been like a little bit hesitant about crowning him already. It is a little bit of a high price in terms of putting him in the first round of a fantasy football draft. Right. But for the price that he got him in the rookie draft, this is amazing, right? I mean, he's going to be great.
Like you're saying, I have a problem with how, the industry is kind of like, making it seem like he's like a surefire, like no downside, like,
they're looking at him like Saquon. They just thinking about Saquon.
Yeah,
I don't think he's the same situation as Saquon, just because I think he'll have actual competition for touches, and I think he still perform really well with, not the full load. And also just like talent-wise, I do think he's like a half step below Saquon personally. But for $22, like I don't want to, get it twisted and make it think like I don't think he's an incredible value for $22. Like I think as a pure, profit over what they'd go on the auction. I think Bijan was one of the best, values coming into the auction draft, even if you include all the keepers. So, I think that's a large reason why this team was able to build out such a impressive, cast around him. I think they nailed a lot of their picks. I think Mark Andrews honestly should have gone for more than 37. I think letting him go for 37 really gave Sandy Pines a chance to build a team with, close to no real weaknesses with some pretty incredible strengths. And if there's one thing that might sink this team, and by sink I mean like, they might not be like, cruising easily to a playoff spot. I guess the one thing is if Deshaun Watson really is kind of just, not that good, yeah, I mean, he did miss a lot of time.
He looked terrible last year. Believe me, I'm thinking about it a lot.
Yeah, he did look terrible. He's switched teams, and sometimes players just don't really, get the same stuff like once they're out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And stuff. So I don't think it's crazy that Deshaun completely flops, and that will be the one kind of weakness of this team, like, that makes them kind of mortal and like in the mix with all the other teams. But I mean, yeah, if you look at how they've built their team, otherwise, like, it is kind of crazy how, stacked they are at every position. Mark Andrews backed up with Likely makes them, so safe at tight end. They're just built out like, Niners defense. They just have high end talent pretty much everywhere. Everybody that, wants this team to do poorly has to be praying for Deshaun Watson to really, really flop. And, thankfully he's a pretty easy guy to root against. So I expect that to be, the one concern for this team going into the season.
Yeah, I'm getting some good memories looking at that AJ Brown, Jamar Chase. That was me from last year for a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be really good. Let me tell you, yes, that's gonna be very, very good for you.
I'm excited.
Anything else you want to add, Diaz, on your own team?
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of the show, where certain teams value certain positions or types of players differently. And what I felt was that the domino of Dustin keeping Travis Kelce is that it would open up the potential tight end market, because I know Dustin is a tight end guy. Like, I believe that you value tight end, Dustin.
I do have a tight end, yes.
Yeah, so, we all of our mocks, we were nervous. Andrews, the way that he's ranked, he would be a $40, $45, $50 player. The way that he's just ranked in ECR. And I said in the back of my head all the time, I really think that the league might just not like to spend that way on tight end. I mean, you look at last year, Kelce was 46? Like, that's why you were able to keep him.
Yep.
And we might be able to get away with this, for this amount. And I to be determined whether everyone who didn't bid on him was right or not. But I like to have that tight end who you can rely on, and hopefully he's not dealing with a lingering injury, because I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean,
we knew that by keeping Kelce, like, Andrew's probably gonna go for way too cheap. Like I think tight end more than any position, teams are either kind of valuers of the position or not valuers of the position, and it's really easy to kind of predict if tight ends will go high by kind of measuring the amount of money or amount of need those specific teams have going into an auction draft. And by our calculations, the teams that did value tight end either kind of had a tight end being kept or just didn't have the money to really go too high on a tight end unless they were kind of sacrificing pretty heavily at other positions. So we did know that, there was a good chance that we pretty much knew that it would be very difficult for Sandy Pines to not come away with Mark Andrews. I think you probably would have gone a good chunk higher than even 37, just because your needs were so limited. Like, there was really not much for you to like spend a ton on other than tight end. So it was unfortunate that we kind of saw that coming, but there's not really much we could have done. So I mean, I think you guys have to be really happy about getting Andrews at that price. So yeah, I think the rest of your team just looks so strong for it because you got him at such a reasonable price.
Yeah, I think you guys know me too. You don't have to. I'm not as big on the tight end personally.
Mm-hmm.
I like to find my solutions elsewhere. So for me, I think one thing that gets overlooked a lot is the QB, personally, and looking at this, that again is the weakness, right? Deshaun Watson, you mentioned, but there's not too much after that either, right? Kirk Cousins,
Sure.
I mean, he's okay. I believe he was a keeper here as well, but he's also getting up there in age. I know the press is really good with the new Netflix show for him, and he looks great, but you never know what can happen. And
no, you're right.
He doesn't have Thielen anymore.
The firepower at QB, even if Watson is like pretty good, like compared to like Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence.
Exactly.
Like, if the rest of LIC performs, then you're not going to catch up at quarterback. I think with Kirk Cousins and Deshaun Watson, and same for maybe Mahomes, Geno Smith, if Geno is like last year, it's definitely good enough at quarterback, probably good enough, but yeah, Watson could be bad, and Kirk Cousins isn't super young and doesn't have untapped potential, at least it seems, right? So he's probably not going to be. I mean, he could be, but he's probably not going to be top 5 quarterback, like just by going by the odds, right? So when you're going up against teams that have like Hurts and Fields, and both of them could be, top 5 quarterbacks, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, both those guys could be top 5 quarterbacks. Those can really just kind of carry you through a matchup against a team like Sandy Pines that's so strong everywhere else, but quarterback it just could be a little bit more limited relative to some of these other teams.
Again, I think strong teams, they all got weaknesses. It's kind of interesting. This is pretty up in the air this year. Mm-hmm. This year is pretty level, right? You don't see these stacked teams. I mean, this is stacked, but it's not super stacked, right? I think it's not like there's no weakness even on the starting roster. I think the other thing we didn't mention is that flex spot of Darnell Mooney starting week 1, really? Right? So that's another, if we want to nitpick, I still think this is the strongest team. Don't get offended, yes. Sure. I still think this is the strongest team in the league. I see that A.J. Brown, Jamar Chase, that's going to be balling. But you're hiding a Darnell Mooney behind there, right? So,
that's true.
That could be a 0.
The depth isn't stacked out for sure. Stacked teams in the past had guys really good, just waiting on the bench and stuff. I think it just shows how teams don't completely fuck up the draft anymore. There was a long period of time where somebody would end the draft and they'd have $60 auction dollars left, and they'd be like, "Oh shit!" The auction's over and I have $60. Or there'd be years where somebody just spent $120 on one player, and then they were just sitting there. But nobody does that anymore. Everybody has a really, I think, good strategy that works for them.
Yeah.
I think the skill floor is so high now. Whoever you think the worst owner in the league is, probably Diaz. Even he can put together a monster team like this. So, it just really goes to show how far we've come, and I really am impressed by how good everyone's draft was. But I do agree that this is the favorite on paper, and I only ranked the Virginia higher because I personally got to give credit to the 3-time champ.
Oh, you did it? You put Virginia higher? Really?
I did. I put Virginia higher because I'm a owner bump guy, and it's not that I think Sandy Pines is a bad owner. I just think Virginia has proven
incredible
that they can do it.
Incredible.
So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see if I'm right, but three championships in a row, that's a resourceful owner. So we'll see if Virginia can figure something out too. So I think it's hard to call this year. I definitely think the on paper, favorite is here in Sandy Pines. But like you said, there's some problems to have with Mooney starting, quarterback maybe not as strong as some other teams, and it's not easy to find a top tier quarterback. You don't just like find it on waivers, or nobody just like trades them away for cheap, right? So maybe they find trouble improving there, and just one of these other teams with really good quarterbacks has to have some things happen like really well for them. But like that could be a team that's really hard for them to overcome too. So yeah, I like, as impressed as I am with this team, I think it just says a lot about our league, how hard it is to call a clear favorite.
Before we respond, Diaz, I just want to lay out Dustin's rankings. It's Madison, Virginia, LIC, and then Sandy Pines. Wow, that's incredible.
Listen, we're playing on a chip with a chip on our shoulder
Jesus.
all year.
Oh my God.
The one
Sandy
in the
Pines is
long
our,
line
is our
of
rival
offenses.
for a reason. We will
This-
talk down at them, downplay them at every turn. So you can expect more of this. I'm gonna be in the power rankings all year, Diaz.
What?
You're gonna have to fight for those number one rankings. Which
This is
Listen,
fourth?
you got this year anyway. So
I remember a long time ago saying to you, that when we used to have like a feud, on Discord or whatever else.
we always.
And I think I said to you, because I was always the one who was salty, and you were always the one who could play it cool. What concern does a boot have for an ant, right?
Oh.
Like in the
Right.
Avengers.
Oh,
Right.
And now we're getting there.
Yeah, no,
You're paying
I-
attention to us. So
Yeah,
listen, we're
everybody- I
coming,
think
and you watch out, because Jamar is going to be there, Bijan is going to be there, AJB is going to be there.
Mhm.
And
Damn.
we're coming strong.
Rivalry week will be a good one. We
Damn.
are rivals for a reason. I have to say that was one of the better cast rivalry weeks. We'll duke it out then. So until
man.
then, we'll see how well this Deshaun Watson led team
Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God. I don't even know who my rival is in comparison. This is hilarious. Man, I'm just looking at this. There's no way I put this below 2 in my personal rankings. So I'm just out of shock when I look at these.
Yeah,
Wow.
You guys got to either win
God.
something or be the poop, and you'll get to make your own rankings. But until
True,
then,
true.
I'm gonna stay under ranking Sandy Pines. That's what's gonna be.
So before we go, do you guys want to make predictions for who's going to make the playoffs? Let's just do that. I don't think it's too hard to make
Yeah, that's fair.
the winner, but or finals even. But let's just say the playoff teams. Just looking at all the teams, it's pretty even. I don't know. I can't even tell you what the worst team is. I actually can't. So
It's really hard. Yeah.
yeah, Dustin, you go first because you already have decided, right? You've already said it. So I mean, I already said it for you, but you can explain your thought process, I guess, a little bit.
Sure. First for playoff teams, I'm gonna put Virginia in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I gotta respect the hustle. I think they've, not every one of their last 3 years has been the same formula. I think they've figured out ways to make it work with different circumstances. They created I believe a pandemic to win the first one. They
Went to Wuhan.
But yeah, I do think I gotta give them the credit until they prove that they've fallen a step behind. They've done it very convincingly, or not convincingly, but they've accomplished something in the last 3 years that I want to respect. For me, another playoff team, I think it's LIC. Really, really good wide receiver core, young, really fun group, and they're also a team that kind of knows what it takes to make the right move. I'm gonna give them a little bit of that credit too. Number 3, I think Madison. Definitely one of the less proven teams this the owner is newer. But I think from talking to them, they've learned a lot. They've had a really good plan this year. I think last year, definitely not a good year for them, but like they were a little bit blindsided by the intricacies and like the different valuations of the HFFL. So I think this year I think they're ready to show a little bit of what they can do. And then for my fourth playoff team, close between honestly like four teams that I really just kind of want to squeeze in there. I want to say Sandy Pines, but that wouldn't be good bulletin board material. So I will say,
Goodness,
damn.
it's hard.
Yeah, I think New England and Mars both have pretty interesting teams that I could see doing it. But I'm going to give it to New England because, Mars has been kind of on tilt ever since they lost in the Hunter Bowl to New England. And, I do like a lot of their moves so far this year, but I'm not ready to say that they're, completely escaped from the tilt, They might make a move that kind of like, derails a lot of what they have going. I do like what they've built, but I'm going to go with New England for my fourth team because I am banking on Lamar Jackson, HFFL MVP, and Puka Nakua being
Amazing.
a top 20 receiver. Yeah, big claims. Hot takes for sure. But, yeah.
It's crazy. Only you, Dustin, could make a statement about like 6 teams when we're talking about 4 playoff teams. You've proceeded to knock down 2 with your take. Incredible. Diaz, are you ready? I can go if you're not ready, but
No, I'll make it quick.
Okay.
See, they got a great squad and a great manager.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to see this going wrong. Give me Mars. I love. If I'm gonna bet on someone, let me bet on John and just let it ride. That's gonna be fun. Great kills: Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and Tony Pollard. They're all great. I mean, you put in whatever other pieces you want to put in, and I trust Dustin to do that. Let me see. You know what? I will. Let me go with your team, Wankyu, as well. I think Lamar is going to have a big year.
Wow!
I don't like it. I was expecting a fire back, but he just killed us with time.
Yeah, and he's putting on the good karma to him. Like he didn't even put his own team in there. Well, goodness.
I know, yeah. I will say there's a Wankyu and Dustin show curse where anytime anyone takes a victory lap for anything they've done, it goes to shit immediately the week after.
No.
There was one week where I think Diaz and Kimmel and Phelps were on the show, and I think it was Cam Newton. I might be wrong.
Oh, yeah.
You love telling this story. Yeah, I remember that.
It's a funny one because you guys are both like kind of like he did. I got to give him credit for the Cam Newton pickup, blah blah blah. And it did look really good for like 2 weeks, and then by like week 5, it looked it aged like milk.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
But I mean that's not the only time. I remember John took a victory lap on T.J. Hawkinson, I think, who scored in his first game of his NFL career, and he was on right after, and he was like, "Yeah, I think I finally nailed a tight end pick." And then like he had an okay year, but it wasn't like good enough for him to really hang his hat on that. And like I'm pretty sure Ken's had one really really bad where it like aged terribly. But consistently I've seen anytime you're like pretty happy about something you've done, it turns out pretty poorly. So this is actually a pretty good strategy. Play humble, play quiet, go under the radar, and the people will see at the end who was right or who was wrong.
True. The talk is cheap, right? You gotta do you gotta do the action. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, you better watch out, everybody coming on this show. Be careful.
It's true.
So for me, I'll also go fairly quick. I do think Sandy Pines is the number 1 best team, so I'm gonna put that as my number 1 seed. Number 2 is LIC. I think they've got a really stacked, so that makes 3 picks for LIC. Pretty solid for them coming out of this. Number 3, I want to put one of Mars or Orange County. I like I said, they're high risk, high reward. One of them is gonna hit that high reward, so I'll give it to Mars. I think he's a little bit set up better to capitalize this year. on getting that boom and going into the playoffs. And the last one is going to surprise everyone. I'm going to put Williston Park. I think that team can deliver. It's going to be steady. You're going to have some lucky bounces here and there to get a couple of wins, some close ones, but I think that's going to be your fourth playoff spot. So
I honestly cannot fault you, like anyone putting any team in the 4. Like it's like I do think some teams are more likely than others, but like it literally takes like this one player outperforming, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, this definitely kind of looks like a playoff team. Like for pretty much every team, which is I was saying, like it's kind of crazy how everybody's like the bottom level of like what everyone's level is like so high now. Like there's nobody you can overlook. Like, you know, nobody is like, you know, making bad, unstrategic decisions every week. Like everyone just makes like pretty solid moves all the time. And I'm like, damn, you know, it's so hard to gain an edge on like anyone just because like everybody is so capable now.
Yep. You got to sometimes do the crazy because everyone's doing the not crazy.
Yeah.
So
no, that's true.
That's
so
what happens.
I kind of like that Mars Orange County pick. Like one of them is definitely going to do something that propels them to like unexpected playoff contention, and the other is probably gonna like ruin their season. So we'll see which.
I feel like I always pick Andrew Chu to go, but this time for real this time I really believe it. This one, I mean, I believed it last time too, but you know, this time it's gonna happen is what I mean. So
for me, if Javonte is like, you know, back up to speed pretty quickly, I think that this team looks like, you know, pretty like promising pretty much everywhere except for probably like overall, like QB might be a little bit weaker, but like you know, Rodgers could be better than a lot of people think. Pickett, I think, is gonna have a solid QB2 season, but you know, might not be like as like we said with Sandy Pines, like it's just not gonna be able to stand up to some of the top teams. But yeah, I think Javonte Williams, if he looks healthy right away, like we might be thinking like, oh, like this team is definitely like up there. Yeah.
Yep. And apologies to Orange County and Yonkers, where we didn't mention you at all in any of our. Well, I mean, we mentioned you a little bit, but
Yonkers got in the lead.
Oh no. Yeah, but it's okay. It's a long season. No one knows what's gonna happen. It is. Prove us wrong. I think if you guys don't have anything else to say, I think we can close.
Yeah, very comprehensive show. I think really good to kind of put this kind of episode back together again, though, because like it's been a while since we like very in depth like looked at all the teams, and like it is good to like kind of you know, have everyone agree. Like, man, everybody's process has just come so far that like I'm like looking at it and I still am like, oh damn, even this team is like, you know, way better than I thought it would be. Like everybody's level is just so high now.
It's crazy. Yeah. Diaz?
Yeah.
No more talk. Looking forward to 7 hours of commercial-free football.
Woo!
Yes, talk is cheap.
Seriously, tomorrow, man, I can't wait. Cannot wait. Yep. It's going to be great. Yeah, good luck, everybody, except for my opponent, and I'll see you guys next time.
Yes. Thanks for having us on, Wankyu.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.